welcome to Retrologic episode 84. I'm Sam Wagers, and I'm here with John Cummins and our special guest, Adam Caparello, joining us from Retro Groove. But Retrologic is not just a podcast, it is a whole community of retro gamers. Visit retrologic.games for our Discord, fair trade merch, blog post written by myself, and dive into our whole family of podcasts. Retro Groove, a music history podcast, and On Topic Retro, a podcast dedicated to one video game per episode, hosted by our very own John Cummins. So a little bit of housekeeping. We have, of course, On Topic Retro, moving forward with an episode on Super Bomberman coming soon. Yeah, isn't that right, nice. John? Who do we have coming on for that? Do we know yet?
So as far as I know right now, I just got done talking to him. I have Eric from All In Podcasts and Eric Plunk. So it's going to be me and the Erics.
Double nice. Eric. Couple of Erics. Talking about Bomberman. Great times. We also, of course, have streaming. I'm back at it with more of Mother 3 Monday. Just wrapped that up this very evening. Getting close to the end game, chapter 7. So this is the longest chapter. We're 3 needles down, 4 to go, if you know what that means, Mother 3 fans. Actually, it was really cool. I was tuning into Seth's stream just on Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
Our friend Seth, who was on the last episode. And there was this guy who came on, and we were just chatting with him, and he actually made a ROM hack that improves the sound quality of the game. So I was actually testing that out on stream, and you can hear a difference. It cuts a lot of the noise out, that kind of like fuzziness, makes everything sound a little bit more crisp. So it was really cool to have that, to have somebody just come by and be like, hey, here's this really cool thing that'll make this even better.
That's awesome.
Lo and behold, it was. And of course, variety streams continuing on Tuesday. I wrapped up Mega Man Wily Wars. That was a whole lot of fun. I even got to do the Wily Tower. I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to what we've played. And the blog is back. I know it's been a while. Thank you for your patience, everyone. And I have another developer retrospective. I really liked writing the one on Treasure back in the time. Took a while to kind of figure out how to develop a style that was appropriate for that, kind of like half retrospective, half history, a little bit of research, kind of melding all that together. And I did the same thing for Sunsoft, and I've seen a lot of positive feedback from that, so that's real encouraging. I'll probably be doing more. So if you hang out on our Discord, or if you follow me on Twitter, please let me know what other developers you'd like to see. That's not all I'm going to do with the blog, but I'd like to make it a regular feature going forward. A lot of good stuff on Sunsoft. Really, just going back through that, learning to appreciate, they're kind of an unsung hero in a lot of ways, like just how many like different ports they made possible, how many like ports from arcades, how many games they published that probably would have been Japan only if they didn't do that. Really, really cool time just going back, learning to appreciate those developers. And of course, Retro Groove has hit 25 episodes with a big milestone.
Yes.
Let's hope for another wonderful 25 episodes down the pipe.
Got some plans in order. Yeah, we took a little bit of a break for the summer, but we're coming back at the end of July.
Awesome. Yeah, summer will be, over before you know it, it seems, but we've still got some summertime left to enjoy. So what has everybody been playing? We'll start with you, Adam, since you are our guest.
Nice.
Go ahead. What have you been buying? What have you been playing? All that good stuff.
I'll try to do this a little bit quickly because I ended up buying kind of a lot. Nothing terribly exciting, really, except the one exciting thing. I unfortunately tend to peruse the Facebook marketplace probably more than I should. And Facebook Marketplace is weird because it's kind of the Wild West of, platforms to buy and sell on. because it's Facebook. There's literally billions of users. It's just bananas. Everybody and their grandmother is on Facebook. So it's not nearly as curated as a place like Mercari, and it's, not as predictable on the price point like eBay might be, which is a double-edged sword. And the good side of that is that sometimes you can find some pretty good steals. I was browsing kind of late at night, and a listing popped up for a Super Nintendo, the SNS 101. So like the second model, the smaller footprint model. And it was listed for $80. And I was like, oh, that's actually a really good price. That's like $20 under what it typically goes for. So I sent a message, and after I sent the message, I went go back to look at the listing, and it wasn't just the system. It was including 3 games, Kirby Superstar, which is like a $60 game by itself, as well as Super Mario Kart and Super Mario World. So I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be gone already. Like, this is typically what happens to me. If you find an absolute steal, it's either already sold or they're like, I've already gotten 100 different messages on this. I'm going to take best offer. So like my heart sank a little bit. But then like half an hour later, I got a message back, and this lady was like, you're the first person that messaged me. It's yours if you want it. And I was like, I can come get it. I'll drive to you first thing in the morning, all excited. Like my heart started pumping. And she was like, oh, if you're going to drive all the way out here, I'll knock $20 off because gas is expensive right now. It was like a 30-minute drive for me. And like, I didn't ask for it or anything. So I got a Super Nintendo, Junior or whatever you want to call it, Kirby Superstar, Mario Kart, and Mario World for $60. And that all added up is like $225 worth of stuff, and it works great. It needed a little bit of cleaning, but everything worked perfectly, and I'm super excited to have, no pun intended, a Super Nintendo now that I can start collecting for, because that's been kind of a blind spot in my collection for quite some time. And then it just kind of had
blind spot. That's my bread and butter is Super Nintendo.
Yeah,
now you can get Plock.
Now I can get
you
Plock.
You got to get Plock.
I can hop on the Plock train. Like back in the time where it was the newest system, I had my NES. We're going to talk about NES, and I have plenty of stories to tell about my amazing time entering the world of video games through the NES library. But once we switched into the 16-bit era, I hopped over to Sega. I was a Genesis kid. So I kind of missed out on, I had a couple of friends that had a Super Nintendo, but, Sega Genesis was my 16-bit system at the time that it was the current system. So the Nintendo diehards will have to forgive me for that, but I was definitely a Sega kid for the 16-bit era, at least. But I got some good deals at a couple of different stores. GameStop still has that 4 games for $10 or less for $20 deal going on, I guess, depending on your location and what their inventory looks like. So picked up Fallout 4, Kingdom Hearts 3, The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt, and Nioh, I think it's pronounced, Nioh, the Team Ninja game, for $20, a bunch of PS4 games. Also had kind of another crazy Facebook Marketplace score for some more PS4 games. This guy was just selling a stack of PS4 games, and he was just blanket $5 each. And most of it was like stuff I wouldn't care about, sports games and like Call of Duty and stuff like that. But I actually ended up getting Hades, Sekiro, Bloodborne, and Metal Gear Solid 5 Phantom Pain for $5 each. And Hades and Sekiro alone are like, those are $25 games each. So for $20, I got like $70 worth.
Yeah, anytime somebody does that, there's usually some good deals. There's usually a couple bad deals, to be honest. But
right.
Like, that's when you just don't care. You're like, I just want to get rid of $5 each.
Well, it wasn't the kind of thing where he was like, you have to buy the whole stack. I was like, can I get these 4 games? And he was like, sure, $20, no problem. So that was a good deal as well. And then last but not least, coming off of the We Love Seth episode, the most recent episode, you know, carrying on that Wii kick that a lot of us have been on the last month or so, if not longer. I hopped on the Game Exchange buy two, get one free for $10 or less deal that they kind of have going on perpetually. I think they're kind of a Texas and Louisiana region only store.
They're up here in Missouri too.
Oh, they are? Oh, okay, cool.
Yep.
But yeah, so they kind of, at least down here, they have a just ongoing buy two, get one free on really anything used $10 or less. So I picked up, for the Wii, I picked up Cooking Mama, D-Blob, which I've never played, Epic Mickey, which I've never played, Sega Superstars Tennis, Super Swing Golf, and then I just happened to also grab, I found 5 Wii games, and I was like, oh, I need one more to get another buy two, get one. So I picked up Horizon Zero Dawn for the PlayStation 4, which I had been looking for, but had a hard time finding it in the blue case. I would always find it in like the red greatest hits case.
Yep.
And for some stupid reason, my OCD brain only wants the blue cases and hates the, I have just an aversion to the like the yellow player's choice on the GameCube games or the red greatest hits on the PlayStation games. And like, just give me the original. It doesn't really matter, but visually speaking, when I'm looking at it on my game shelf here, it's like, I want it all to look nice and uniform. So what I've been playing, I bought Electhead like the weekend that it came out. I finally beat it. Fantastic game. I love it. Love everything about it. A lot of y'all got me back into, and Sam, you're part of this too, but I've been playing a lot of Monster Hunter Rise. I bought it when it came out, and I haven't actually even gotten Sunbreak yet, the expansion, but I got it when it came out. I played maybe 5 hours or so of it, and like it just, for some reason, I couldn't get into it. It didn't grab me the same way that Monster Hunter Tri did on the Wii. I played the crap out of Monster Hunter Tri on the Wii, but this one, for some reason, when it came out, I was just, I don't know if I wasn't in the right headspace or if it was like over my head at the time, but everyone's excitement over Sunbreak and seeing so much activity there, I dove back into it and I've been having a blast. So back into Monster Hunter, thankfully. Also been playing and trying to finish up Sakuna of Rice and Ruin for the Switch. I picked that up. One of the community members sent me a $20 GameStop gift card for my birthday in June. And so it was $20. It was like perfect. I was like, I want to play this. That's been really fun, but I'm really trying to finish it before we get inundated with JRPGs for this second half of this year. Really fun game, really unique. I've been liking it a lot.
That's a game I need to go back to. I dropped it cold because I lost a lot of progress, which was weird. It had to be some kind of, because the game auto saves. Like it's supposed to auto save like every season, right? But I lost like a year. I lost like a harvest worth of progress.
That's weird.
Just because something like the game crashed on me, and I just booted it back up, and it was like, oh no, I'm like back in spring now.
Yeah,
that was in winter.
Kill your,
and I was like, well,
willingness to play.
Because the game's already a little bit grindy when it comes down to like, oh, like this level's too hard. I need to go back to the other level, or I need to wait for my rice harvest. Really, is what it comes down to. Like that's how all your stats go up, is when you harvest rice.
Exactly.
But,
yeah, I can. Anytime that you end up losing a big chunk of, that's why I ended up not finishing, and yet to this day haven't finished Majora's Mask, because back in like 99 or 2000,
I'm trying to finish Majora's Mask.
Well, what happened was, this was like 20 years ago. I didn't understand how the owl saves, the owl statues. I don't know if those are on the 3DS version. I haven't played the 3DS version, but on the N64 version, you can it's not like a full on save, but you can do like a temporary save at the owl statues. I didn't understand that was like a one-time save. It is literally like a temporary save where you can, save your progress and then pick up from there. But once you pick up from there, that save is gone. And I didn't really understand that at the time. So I lost like the entirety of the third dungeon. So I gave up and I was like, no, it's like 4 or 5 hours. The entire dungeon that was like really difficult for me at the time. I was like, nope, I'm done. I gave up on it. So I totally understand what you're talking about. Just if you lose progress in a game, it just kills your desire to even play it ever again. And then just silly stuff like playing Fall Guys a lot with either by myself or with community members. Played Fall Guys a lot on the Nintendo Pals 24-hour stream that they did this past weekend. That was a lot of fun playing with other community members. Sam, I think you were on there as well.
Yeah, that's true. I hopped in a little bit. That was my first time playing Fall Guys.
It's silly and it's not something to be taken seriously. But it can be fun when you got a group of people together. And then last but not least, I've been still trying to finish up Ocarina of Time 3D on the 3DS. It was the first 3DS game that I picked up earlier this year, and I'm still kind of trudging through it. It's still one of the best games ever created, but it's just at this point, 25 years later, it doesn't hold up as well as I thought it would. It's still one of my favorite games of all time. And I know we've talked about this in the Discord, but just something about, moving on from there and playing, Twilight Princess and Wind Waker and Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild. It's like going back to Ocarina of Time is kind of difficult. It's
just at that low point in the Zelda life cycle, give it another 10 years, another re-release, people will say it's the greatest thing ever again.
It's still one of the greatest games ever made. It's just hard for me to trudge through it sometimes. The dungeons are definitely the high point, but all of the in between, like just wandering around or what am I do next? You know what I mean? But I've already beaten it 2 or 3 times in my lifetime, but wanted to play through it again on the 3DS and have it in a portable platform is really, really cool. So that's it for me. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, a lot of games. Speaking of people who bought a lot of games recently, John, you've got quite a list there.
Yeah, I had to make up for last week. I think I only bought like 3 games. Most of these were $1, so I can't say a whole lot. All these Atari games I bought for $1 a piece.
Nice.
I got some 2600 games. I got Defender, Tron: The Deadly Discs, Adventure of Tron, Asteroids, Missile Command, Space Invaders, and the singular title Adventure, which is supposed to be a pretty good game, actually. I haven't played it.
I haven't played that either.
I actually have. It's on the wait. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. Is that the one that's just a square?
Where your avatar,
just a square.
Your avatar in the game is just a little dot,
just like a square.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay,
nice.
Yeah, I know this one.
Good stuff.
So these are all like, I'm trying to build my Atari 2600 back up because my brother has all of our games from when I was a kid, and I don't think he even knows where they're at anymore. So it's not one of those where I could just ask him to, let me use them. So these were just like some of the staples. And like I said, they were $1 a piece. This guy was just basically giving them away at a flea market. He also had some Atari 5200 games, which I don't have a 5200. That's something I'm going to have to remedy here soon. But I picked up Dig Dug, Quicks, and Pac-Man.
Nice.
Which I have all these games on other consoles, so I'm not in a big rush to go out and find a 5200. But they're definitely neat, but man, they're so big. Like, we complained about the original Xbox when it came out, and like the 5200 is like massive.
That's a big brick, huh?
You can store your controllers inside of it and all that stuff. Like,
Oh man,
it's huge.
Practically a piece of furniture.
right?
Yeah. And like, I don't know. There's something about the 2600. Like, I like the wood grain aesthetic of it. Like, it looks like a classic piece of, 70s electronica. Like, stereos had wood grain, TVs had wood grain. Of course, the Atari would have wood grain. So,
Right.
and then whenever the 5200 rolled around, it's like gray plastic. It kind of like seemed like it took a note from like the NES,
Yeah, and that was just kind of, and we can get into this more when we start talking about the NES, but you even see this, and this, I'm going to nerd out really briefly on this, but you had that switch from the wood grain in the late 70s and really early 80s into the more like silver and gray
space age type.
Yeah, exactly, in the early 80s. So you see that with like vintage audio equipment where like the receiver that I have in my living room for my record player, it's the silver face with the actual wood paneling on the sides. But as soon as you get into the early 80s, it all switches over to, plastic, maybe a little bit of metal for like the knobs and stuff like that. But yeah, so that makes a lot of sense in terms of
that lovely gray plastic that turns yellow after a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is actually like a chemical reaction in the compound. That's not because of smoking.
Right.
A lot of people think it's like, oh, this came from a smoking household. No, that's just what that plastic does after it's been in the sun. Especially
the Super Nintendo, it had a special additive in its plastic compound that was supposed to be specifically for fireproofing the console, and that is what makes those ones turn like super obscure shades of yellow, like all kinds of different colors. And then they quickly like removed it later on because they found out that's what was happening. But
yeah, no way to find out about that without the time passage going on there.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The UV sensitivity of it was unknown, but yeah, definitely. I mean, that's why the N64 was a totally different color and everything. I imagine they're like, yep, not doing that again.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But no, I do miss that like wood grain, like when the Atari VCS came out, I almost bought one just because they look cool. And I was like, I'll never play that.
Right.
See, I actually like it too. And this is like well before my time, no nostalgia. I do think it looks cool. And it's the kind of thing that where like it blends in. Like it's not supposed to stand out like next to your TV. It's supposed to just kind of be there in the room,
Yeah. Yep. Back when people actually had wood grain furniture, it was part of the furniture at that point.
Yeah, or you even go back to like the big old radio sets,
Yes.
It was that same kind of style.
Good stuff.
Yep. And I mean, when I think of the Atari, I think of this little like 13-inch black and white TV that my brother and I had, that you had to actually like screw the RF adapter into the back.
Right,
actually,
the two prongs.
An antenna adapter so that you could put your RF adapter onto the TV set.
I remember that.
It was the Atari definitely brings back a lot of memories with my brother because he's like 10 years older than I am. And then the NES is more memories with my cousin because we played that a lot more together.
Nice.
But like you said, we'll get to more of that later in the show. I'll finish up my list. I bought some Switch games. I bought Dragon's Dogma, which is probably considered retro at this point.
Probably.
Being on the 360.
Awesome game.
Sure.
And then I bought Connect Tank for the Switch, which is a weird Natsume game that if you really like do like a quick look at the gameplay, it reminds me a lot of Dragon Quest Heroes Rocket Slime, like the tank battles.
Oh, nice.
So I watched a video for it once a long time ago I say a long time ago. I think it was like early 2021, and totally forgot about it until somebody mentioned it somewhere in Discord. I can't remember which Discord it was now. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. I meant to buy this game, and then just so happened there was a Prime deal. It was like $14 on Prime Day, and then I had the little $10. I guess it's like a reward for doing the little stamp sheet for Amazon. And so I got that game for $4.
Nice.
Kind of crazy. It was worth waiting for, I guess. I'm excited to play that one. I haven't got to play it yet. Just really haven't had a whole lot of time to play any real Switch games. Mainly been playing stuff for the show that I can. I also picked up the Hunters, The Reckoning for the Xbox. This is one that was on a list of good games that somebody had posted for Xbox exclusives in Discord, so I picked that up. I also grabbed Bomberman Act Zero for the Xbox 360, which is basically a remake of the original Bomberman, I guess, loosely. It's also known as being a terrible game, but I have like a soft spot for it. So
it looks cool.
This
I never
was
played it.
the hardcore reimagining of Bomberman as this like gritty
Bomberman hardcore.
Yeah, Seth and I were talking about this
semi-realistic robot. I mean, he's technically always been a robot, but you can't always tell.
Yes. And we won't even get into the weird connection to Load Runner right now. We'll save that
for another day.
Yep. And then I also picked up Uncharted 3, the Steelbook edition. I owned Uncharted 3, my PS3 came with Uncharted 3 when I bought it. And this was the time period where I wasn't holding on to all my games, especially my PlayStation games. They were so cheap. I figured if I ever wanted them, I could just buy them back again.
Right.
And really that mindset was okay at that time because you can still buy all these games for dirt cheap. So I think I traded them in and probably got like $5 a piece and, for something else. And then it turns out you can still go back and buy this game for $5. So It wasn't as big of a deal.
Not a big market for PlayStation 3 games.
Especially not ones that sold millions of copies. Like it's not like Pokemon where like they sell millions of copies, but they're still valuable. All the Uncharted games you can usually buy for like $5 to $10. And this one was like a steelbook version. I don't even remember it being a thing when I bought the game originally. I wasn't as big into special editions and stuff back then. So it was cool. It was $10, so I grabbed it. And then the last thing I bought was Super Bomberman for the Super Nintendo. And this was strictly just to have a physical copy to play for the upcoming On Topic Retro show. So
nice.
I realized I have misplaced my copy of Super Bomberman that I had as a kid. I don't know where it went.
Now that you bought it, you'll find it.
Oh, probably. Or somebody that's related to me, a relative has it that I've let borrow. But I've rented Super Bomberman enough times to probably buy it 5 times. and then I went and bought a copy of it. And then I've misplaced it and had to buy another copy. So I spent a lot of money on Super Bomberman in my lifetime. It was the weekend, have 3 or 4 buddies come over with the multi-tap and just play multiplayer Bomberman all weekend.
I didn't have that experience until 64.
Oh man, Super Bomberman is super fun. I miss that game. As far as what I played, oh yeah, I started up Dragon's Dogma. I haven't made very far. I played this game a little bit when it came out, and I've totally forgot. Like it's been that long enough now that I've totally forgotten what it's even about. I think they have a animated series on Netflix that I think I started to watch a little bit because it's like starting to come back to me, some of the things, seeing that and how it's tied together. But I also started up Time on Frog Island. This is a game that I've been on kind of the lookout for. It's just a little indie game. It's fun. It definitely doesn't hold your hand. Like, you crash land on an island and they don't do anything for you.
You just got
You just
to
literally have to figure out every single thing. Yep, and it's like one of those perpetual item trading games.
Oh,
it's kind of like the what is it like?
Getting the big Goron sword in Zelda.
Yes, exactly.
Do the whole trade chain.
Gotta have this to get that. Gotta have that to get this, and it's just the whole island is full of these frogs that need things, and you have to go find it, but you have no idea where any of it's at. They don't talk. Like the dialogue is all just like pictures of things, like roughly drawn pictures of things.
Oh, man.
And you just have to figure it out. So far, there's a lot of things that I have probably not even touched.
That sounds really fun to me in a really weird and like masochistic way. Like, it's crazy.
It is, like, I haven't put a lot of time into it, but like I'll just like pick one thing that someone's, because you can run around and talk to all of them and they'll ask for something different, but you'll just spend all your time running around if you don't just pick one and try to like figure it out.
Right.
So I've been trying to just hop on for the little bit of time that I have at a time, pick an item, go find it, and then get off for a minute. I'll drive myself crazy trying to explore this island.
There you go.
And then I played through Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards, for this month's Retro Rewind.
Nice.
That game holds up about as well as I remember. I wasn't a huge fan whenever it originally came out. I did like the being able to combine copy abilities, but a lot of them don't make sense. Like when you do combine them,
that's the best part. You're like, what in the world is this going to be? And you're surprised every time.
Yeah, just remember, don't make the dynamite, because that's horrible. It's like no matter what you do, you get hurt.
It hurt itself in confusion.
Yeah, the bomb blast takes the radius is the whole screen. So like no matter where I was, I would throw the dynamite out, and then like no matter where I positioned myself, I would get hurt by the blast itself. I think my favorite is the firework Kirby. Like it's
firebomb.
Pretty much. Yep. He just like turns into a firework, and like you can do it like 3 or 4 times, and it actually like kind of launches him across the map instead of flying or running. So
nice.
It actually, it's, I don't know. Kirby 64 is one of those, like, it's a good looking game and it runs really good, but like you could definitely tell it wasn't at its potential whenever they got done with it. Like you could tell they wanted to do so many more things with it, and they were just like, oh, we're either out of time or this is the, what we have to give. But it's definitely not on the same tier as like the Super Nintendo games, or even I would probably even place the NES game above this game. I don't know how much I'll get for that, but
the NES game's pretty good. I like Kirby 64. I have some fond memories of that. It was actually the first Kirby game we long-term owned. We had a copy of Superstar that just like broke and was never replaced, and that was like a very sad day.
Yeah.
But so after that, Kirby 64 was the only Kirby game I owned until until Nightmare in Dreamland on the Game Boy Advance, I guess. Not that long, but
nice. And then for me, last but not least, I also bought and played through Electhead.
Nice. You beat it?
That's an awesome puzzle game. Oh yeah, that's
so cool.
It was a lot of fun. Just for being as simple as it is, you could do so much with it. It's definitely makes you, like, especially later on in the game, really makes you think about things.
For sure.
But it's a blast. Definitely recommend it. I don't want to spoil anything, so I won't talk much about it.
Especially for $10. Like, oh my God.
Oh yeah.
I know it's relatively short,
value.
but they could have charged twice as much for that. That's a great game.
It could have easily been
I need to get that game.
$15 game.
I need to get that game, but I also need to finally get Pocky and Rocky and finish Majora's Mask. So
there you go.
There's too many games, man.
There's too many games.
I couldn't find Pocky and Rocky anywhere. GameStop was sold out. So I turned to PlayAsia, buy it on PlayAsia, and then Amazon all of a sudden just gets random stock of it at $30. I was like,
which is weird because I canceled my initial order because they couldn't even give me a day they were going to give it by.
Yeah.
Now I reordered it, so we'll see if that's supposed to get here Wednesday now. So
yeah, so now I'm going to be waiting probably like another month to get Pocky and Rocky, but that's all right. It gave me an excuse to go ahead and buy the Klonoa 2-pack, and
nice.
I went ahead and pre-ordered, I guess would be it's up for sale. I don't know when it will come out, but I bought Persona 4 for the Switch physically. I bought the Asian version. So I will have 4 and 5 physically. We'll have to see if the Asian region gets a physical version of 3 when it releases in next year.
Yeah, because they're not planning on releasing 4 or 3 physically, at least not yet. What I saw, right, in North America, right.
Yep. So yeah, I went ahead and just bought it on bought the Asian version. I think it was like $30 or something like that.
We do what we got to do.
Yeah, PlayAsia gets me every once in a while, but their shipping's kind of weird. So like, I usually try to buy things in bundles or groups so I can.
Yeah, I was waiting a while for Chrono Cross.
Oh man, yeah, I don't know what
game
happened.
I haven't
with that
played.
Game.
I still haven't played it, so I can't complain about waiting that long.
I haven't either, but I was definitely not expecting that wait.
Speaking of games that came from Asia, this last week, an order I placed a while ago, I actually didn't come from Asia. It was a U.S. seller. Actually, was selling these bundled together, shipped from California at a pretty reasonable price, not too much shipping to pay. So I kind of jumped on it. I kind of wanted to check these out for a while. The first 3 Starfy games on the Game Boy Advance. So
cool.
These didn't release outside of Japan. There are 4 that predate the DS game that did get localized everywhere. Well, I guess not everywhere, but it got a release in North America. I'm pretty sure it released in Europe as well, just as the legendary Starfy for DS. So there's the Legend of Starfy 4 is also a DS game that was before that one. So that's pretty much the only game in the series I'm missing, if I understand correctly. I think that last DS game, the 5th one, is the last one.
It's kind of weird that we didn't get Starfy until the 5th game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it'll never be as weird as Advance Wars, which we didn't get until Advance Wars, and then Japan didn't get some of the Advance Wars games, and I still don't understand that.
So, but with Starfy 1 through 3, is there any reading in those?
There is a lot more than I thought there was. I've heard it billed as pretty English friendly, and it still is kind of, because the tutorial section gives you signs, and they have pictures. They have text. They also have pictures. So it'll prompt you. There will be some Japanese text. I don't even know what it says. But there will also just be a picture that's like, press, hold B to run. And like, it'll be like, hold B, run, and jump to jump further, and stuff like that. You can figure it out without having to read it, but there's actually a lot of text there. So if you're like me and you just get bothered by the fact you might be missing something by not reading it, it's kind of annoying. But I was progressing just fine playing the game. And it helps that I know at least a little bit of Japanese. I've worked on recognizing the characters. One thing I guess I didn't realize, though, is that when you play games that have hiragana script, sometimes it's hard to recognize the characters, just because if you learn through a tool like Duolingo or whatever, any modern Japanese learning, you get accustomed to the way characters look in modern, like, ASCII values. They have appropriately curved strokes, And
they're
on a Game
little
Boy
bit more
Advance game,
separated.
it's pixel lines.
Right.
So you have a number of pixels that are trying to make a curved line, and sometimes it just makes it that much harder to recognize the character. But it does help to at least be able to like, oh, I understand, hi, EA, that's yes, no. I am being asked a yes, no question. When in doubt, agree with everything to progress in the game.
Unless it's, do you want to hear that again?
Yeah. And I've seen a couple of those, and I pick up on it and contextually pick up on it and say no. I have also benefited from recognizing when it isn't yes or no. One of the other things, I don't even know exactly what they're asking me, but I contextually realize I'm being asked if I want to play a mini game, because the options are asobu, play, or some variant of like do not play. So there's a lot of mini games in Starfy, as it turns out, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It is one of those games you wonder why didn't get localized, if it'll ever come back. It's interesting. I've barely touched the DS game, and at this point, I'd kind of like to try to play through the others. I'm planning on streaming it tomorrow night, so we'll see how that goes if I wind up getting stuck, because I don't really know how to read Japanese.
Maybe you'll get
or
lucky
if I
and
can
somebody
just,
will stop by that does know
I can
Japanese
just
and can translate.
fumble my way through it well enough. But yeah, all three of those, which is pretty cool, is a decently good deal, especially to get those without paying international shipping. And the other pickup, somewhat loosely inspired by doing my research on Sunsoft, since this is a game they published, developed by someone else, but Sunsoft published it in North America. I think Capcom published it in Japan, called Power Quest. A little game called Power Quest for the Game Boy Color. This is like, it just kind of caught my attention because it's a pretty low price. So I just found a copy online for like $12. And it's like a fighting game RPG for the Game Boy Color. So just kind of like, you know what? That sounds cool. Fighting game RPG, has robots. Yeah. Sign me up.
Beat that.
And as I haven't really had a chance to play it yet, that just came in today. But as for what I've been playing, rainy weekend, lots of Monster Hunter, a little bit more Capcom Fighting Collection. I've been playing that, as I said, streaming Mother 3 and wrapped up Mega Man The Wily Wars. I did finally get to the like brand new content of that game. So it's a remake of the first 3 Mega Man games. If you beat all 3 Mega Man games, you unlock what's called the Wily Tower. And first, Wily challenges you to take on these 3 new robot masters. I cannot for the life of me remember their names. I'm pretty sure it was kind of a butchered localization, because their name's like Buster Rod G or something. The boss is clearly based on Sun Wukong. He's like, he's like a monkey looking guy. He's got a staff that extends and retracts. And then there is another one that's, I couldn't figure out what the last one was. I think they're all ties to mythology or something though. So they would have made a lot more. They probably have names that make sense in Japanese, but after you beat that, so for Wily Tower, the cool thing is you actually, every time you start a level, pick, your 8 weapons from all, 24 weapons from the first 3 Mega Man games.
Oh, wow.
You actually even get to pick your 3 sub items from either the item 1, 2, and 3 for Mega Man 2, the Rush Coil, Rush Jet, and Rush Marine for Mega Man 3, or even the Magnet Beam from Mega Man 1. So you get to, so you pick those at the start of every level, and you'll even find there's a lot of branching paths within the stages, especially once you get to the Wily Castle. So there's a Wily Castle after those 3 stages. So you're talking, 7 extra levels at this point.
Man.
And there's branching paths, and you'll recognize, because you just played through all 3 Mega Man games, you'll recognize like, oh, this level has a shortcut I can take if I use the crash bomb on this wall here, because you'll recognize the walls that you destroy with Crash Bomb. And then you'll also see there are those other walls from Mega Man 3 that you need Hard Knuckle to destroy. So I haven't verified it, but I think there's actually different bosses depending on which route you take through the Wily Castle. So cool. It's pretty interesting. It's really cool. It's a great reward for that. Really puts the icing on the cake. If it was just 16-bit Mega Man 1, 2, and 3, that would be cool enough, but this really makes it like something special that I'm really glad got re-released. And I'm still surprised. I was like, Capcom is selling Mega Man Anniversary Collection on the Switch, or Mega Man Legacy Collection. Sorry, Anniversary Collection's the old one. I'm kind of surprised they would put this on the app. I know it's different, but it's like it's kind of competing with themselves. But I'm glad they did. It's a really great get for the Genesis lineup on the NSO app. And I'm really glad I got to play it because
it's like 4 years old now. So on
yeah,
Switch.
they've probably sold all the copies they're going to. Move on. Sell Battle Network next, which they're doing. Yes. So that's great. And speaking of NSO, checked out the new drops. Pokemon Puzzle League, just played a little bit of that. I mean, it's paneled upon, but it is interesting hearing the N64 version of those Pikachu jukebox songs. Yes, it's very much a nostalgia trip. I mean, I grew up, I was like right at the appropriate age. Like I was 6 years old when Pokemon hit the States, like going to first grade. It was a big thing. Like that was like the first like shared pop culture experience for me was Pokemon. So it does still hit a nostalgia nerve for sure. And also, since I have booted up the Japanese NSO apps as well, which get some games we don't that were never localized, checked out Custom Robo. Also, a lot of text I can't understand, so I'm probably not going to fumble through that one. But I managed to get in the first couple battles and had a lot of fun. I really wish that game came over to the US too, because there's nothing like it on the N64. If you've played Custom Robo on the GameCube, this is basically the same thing. It's an earlier version of that. If you haven't played Custom Robo on the GameCube, it's worth checking out.
It's interesting they never brought the 64 games over, and other than I think there was that DS game, they didn't really do anything else with it. I thought it was a great GameCube game, and who knows why these franchises just kind of fizzle out, but I was really hoping they would continue that on and do more with it, because there's so much room for modern quality of life improvements and in all aspects of gameplay, graphics and all of that. But it's just another dead in the water Nintendo franchise, unfortunately.
You hope to see it again, but I guess sometimes it feels like Nintendo is just trying to juggle all those franchises, right? They can only keep so many in the air at once, and they're very invested in keeping Mario, Pokemon, Zelda in the air, and poor F-Zero, let alone stuff like Custom Robo or even Star Fox. Yeah. I will say, and maybe it's just the particular like graphical style they went with. Cause I'd played, it never hit me quite the same way with the GameCube game. Cause I remember, I don't have it, but I remember playing through the whole GameCube game on a rental. And, I guess it's like the kind of pretty basic, like pixelated top-down perspective, especially of like the overworld where you're this kid going around challenge people to robot fights. And it really gives me Battle Network vibes. Just like that whole like setup of like you're this kid and you fight other kids' robots with your robot, and like it's this, I don't know, like it just aesthetically feels very much like Battle Network to me, which is great.
Yeah, I can see that comparison.
Yeah, that's what I've been playing. It's certainly a lot. It always feels like a lot, doing this. A lot to catch up on every 2 weeks. But how about we move on to some Prices Retro?
Let's go.
Let's do it.
if this is your first time playing, this is how we play. I am going to list off 4 to 5 games, and everyone else has to guess how much the games are worth in total. Whoever's guess is the closest wins that round, and the next person lists off their games. Everyone brings a list of games, and everyone guesses on each other's lists. At the end of the game, whoever won the most rounds wins the game. But look out for the poltergeist. He guesses $300 on every list, and if he wins the game, Dan will send a poltergeist sticker from the merch store to a lucky raffle winner. So, who wants to go first? John, I don't know when the last time you went first is.
Sounds good to me.
Do you like to do the honors and start us off?
I've got a short list in honor of the topic tonight. And I also did the old, Sam made this one popular, so this is the old first word, last word. So the first game is Demon Sword for the NES Loose. The second game is Sword Master for the NES Loose. And then the last game is Master Chew and the Drunkard Who for the NES Loose.
What? Oh, I've never heard of that last one, so shot in the dark for me.
I honestly have no idea. I do not shop for NES games hardly at all. I don't feel like these are going to be super pricey though, so I'm going to put my guess at just $150.
I always tend to undershoot, so I'm going to just kind of bump up my total a little bit. Traditionally, whenever I come on and play, I always undershoot. So I'm going to bump it up a little bit to 95.
Okay. Well, the total for my lot is 408.82.
Oh my god.
Oh my.
Always.
Is it Master Chew?
It's got to
Nope.
be Master.
Really?
Okay, so Demon Sword for the NES Loose is $10.17. And
Okay.
Sword Master for the NES Loose is $353.75.
Holy
Okay.
guacamole.
I had no idea.
And then
Wow.
Master Chew and the Drunkard Who for the NES Loose is $44.90. I wanted to add that one because it's just funny. It's fun to say.
Wow.
Score one for the ghost. We're in trouble.
Yep.
Oh
Right now
my
the ghost is on top. He was only $108 off.
All right, Adam, give us your list. I hope it's not
All
close
right.
to 300.
Well, we'll see. So I also went with all NES games in honor of our main topic tonight, but I also have a sub theme, and I just got back from a little oceanside vacation, so these are all connected as such. The first game, these are all NES games, and these are all complete in box. I know we hate NES complete in box pricing, but it makes it a little bit more interesting. Okay. First game is complete in box, California Games.
I knew it.
Easy guess. Second game is Super Spike V-Ball, complete in box. Third game is TNC Surf Design, complete in box. And the fourth game is Jaws 5-screw version, complete in box for the NES.
You went there with the 5-screw
Gotta
version.
have a 5-screw in there.
5-screw.
Oh my. That's just something I have I don't even have any ballpark for.
I'll go first then.
All right.
I think I'm going to say 650.
Well, I always guess low, so I'm just going to guess 500 and hope that's not ridiculously low.
Okay, so the total of all 4 games, according to pricecharting.com, is $1,913.25.
Oh man.
Stunned silence.
Yeah.
Is it the 5-screw one?
Yeah.
I can't wrap my head around that, where people are like, oh, it's got to have the one with 5 screws, got to pay 3 times as much.
If it's complete in box, how do they know it's a 5-screw?
Well, these aren't
Well, it's
necessarily
just complete
new.
in box. It's not sealed.
It's not sealed, I guess. Yeah.
But yeah, there are certain games later on that had very, very low number runs of the 5-screw before they switched to the 3-screw manufacturing standard.
Yep.
The only other one I know of is like Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. The 5-screw one is apparently worth a vast amount of money.
Yeah, it's like $3,000 or something.
It's a lot. So the individual prices on this lot are $39.99 for California Games, $24.96 for Super Spike V-Ball, $55 even for TNC Surf Design, and according to pricecharting.com, complete in box 5-screw copy of Jaws is $1,793.30.
It's all Jaws. Those other games don't even matter on this list.
I was thinking like $500 for complete in box on that one.
I mean, I'm sure I would have gone I was flabbergasted when I saw that. I just looked up Jaws and, I saw the normal Jaws listing and then the 5-screw listing. I was like, holy moly. Well, I got to throw that in there. So. But at least the Ghost didn't win.
No,
at least the Ghost didn't win.
Somehow.
Technically, even I beat the Ghost.
Yes.
On that round. All right. Well, my list has nothing to do with anything else we've mentioned this week, but they are all games developed by Human Entertainment. Just because. So the PlayStation games are complete in box. The Nintendo games are loose. I usually do this because this is typically how I buy things, because PlayStation complete in box is usually not that big of a markup. But that's what I'm going for there. So I'll repeat it as we go through. I have Ultraman for the Super Nintendo loose. Clock Tower 3 for the PlayStation 2 complete in box.
Ooh.
F1 Pole Position 64 for the Nintendo 64 loose. And Vanguard Bandits for the PlayStation complete in box. So it is Adam's turn to go first.
I'm going with $475.
$475. Okay.
Let's do 275.
275 for John. Now, that's pretty close to the Ghost's 300.
It's dangerously close.
Dangerously close.
I figured I might cover the bottom and he can cover the upper.
The total value is $263.80. So John takes it.
John.
Very close, actually.
So
almost
close.
Spot on. So Ultraman for the Super Nintendo, $10.71. Clock Tower 3 for the PS2, $69. F1 Pole Position 64 for the N64, $8.34. And Vanguard Bandits for the PlayStation, $175.75.
So
that's
I was
the pricey
on
one in
with
here.
Vanguard Bandits, but for some reason I way overshot that Clock Tower. I thought that was worth a lot more.
Yeah, some Clock Tower 3, I guess, is, PS2 games 10. There aren't
Yeah.
that many super expensive PS2 games. If it was like the First Fear on PS1, I think that might be
I think
close
it's
to
kind of
what you
like
were thinking of.
how Wild Arms works. Like 3 is the cheap one because it came out on PS2.
There you go.
Yeah, the PlayStation 1 complete in box is 144. So that's the first game. But yeah, that
At least
is
the ghost
it.
didn't win.
At least the ghost didn't win. John took us to victory. Yep. Clearly, he has no competition without Dan here. But that is another week of Prices Retro.
Sweet.
The rest of us will redouble our efforts. So I also have for this week not a Spot the Fake, but a games described badly list.
Oh, nice.
This is one of the other games we play. I like to kind of rotate, mix it up. We have a couple of these games. So I have 5 games here. I am going to describe them badly. And you are going to guess what they are. We'll just do them one at a time. I have 5 of these. I put this together thinking most of these are probably easy, but we'll see. So to start us off, I have the 2-wheeled vehicle that stirs up passion. And there is no theme to any of this. This is just random games that popped into my head that I determined to describe badly.
I got it.
Yes.
Excite Bike.
Excite Bike. Yep.
Yes.
Second, Not That M.
Other M.
Got it.
Metroid.
The other M.
We said it at the same time. Other M.
Third, Hit the Sun.
Hit the Sun.
I'm drawing a blank on this one. Hit the Sun. Oh, no, because that's got it in the title.
Got nothing.
Nothing, huh? Oh, this is one that's going to be obvious when you hear it.
Seems like it. Hit the Sun. Light.
Yeah, I got nothing. I don't know why.
Are you giving up?
I really don't have anything.
Solar Striker.
Solar Striker.
Solar Striker, yeah.
Because this couple just riffing off the titles. So the next 2 are not really riffing off the titles, if that helps at all. You can probably tell from the way it's worded. But so the next one, the game that actually was what your concerned grandma thought Pokemon was. This one you might have to be in a weird headspace that I was in, but
I'm gonna go with Digital Devil Saga.
Yeah, I'll grant you that. So just any
Really?
Megami Tensei, that was where my head was going with that. Well, because you're literally using a computer to summon demons, and it's also like Pokemon. So Digital Devil Summoner, Shin Megami Tensei.
Nice.
That's the first game anyway, but that series I would give you the point for that. And lastly, do literally anything by using your words.
Literally anything.
Can't be Hey You Pikachu because he would literally do nothing with your words.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Huh. I'm going to try to not take this so literally. No, I still got nothing.
What's the game where you use the I think it's like a DS game where you use the stylus to draw out the. Or am I thinking of Drawn to Life?
Yeah, my brain kind of went to
It is
Drawn to
not
Life,
Drawn
or
to
Scribble
Life.
Knots, but
The Scribble Knots. There you are.
Scribble Knots. There we
It
go.
You
is?
threw it out there. I'll just get. Yep, Scribble Knots.
oh,
Write anything, solve everything. That was the
That's the one I was thinking of, not Drawn to
slogan.
Life.
So okay, weird. I've never actually played Scribble Knots. I assumed it was the same as Drawn to Life, where you're not. Are you writing words in Scribble Knots?
Yeah, you're writing words.
Oh,
Yeah,
I literally didn't even know that. My brain.
any non-proper noun, allegedly, any non-proper noun is in the game, and you can spawn it by writing it.
I got that one by accident. I'll take it.
Well, I heard it. I figured I'd give it to you, because otherwise I didn't want to just let you squirm going on and on. But yeah, so yeah, just a list. Like I said, no theme kind of makes it hard because I jumped all different platforms, and I think when your head is still thinking of like NES games, it's hard to be like, oh yeah, there was a DS game about writing words. But
Right.
yeah, I have fun making these lists. So
No, that was
that's
good.
always
That was a good list.
always a good one. It's always fun to just come up with that. And yeah, do we have a trivia card, John?
We do. I got one ready right here. Let's see. The classic video game, man, I don't like how they put that. The classic video game Perfect Dark was originally released on which game console?
The Nintendo
Come
64.
on, 64.
Yes. That's not a... Is that a classic already?
64?
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
classic.
retro.
Yeah,
Yeah, it says
classic
the
and
classic
retro are
video
not
game
necessarily
Perfect
the
Dark.
same thing.
To be honest, I think classic is a better word than retro. I don't want to get into that here, but retro,
Yeah.
at least like in the fashion world, usually refers to something styled like the old thing, but is itself new, not an authentic like vintage piece. So really classic is a better word for actual old games. Not, I mean, retro should apply to stuff like Shovel Knight that looks older than it is, but
I always interpreted it like the word classic meant that it was firmly established as like an objectively good.
Good.
yeah.
You know what I
And
mean? Like-
that definitely still has that weight to it. Not everything that is old is classic.
Right.
All right,
That's how
question
I always
2.
took it.
Question 2.
What was the first live-action movie based on a video game?
Based on a video game.
I'm not actually sure.
It's probably wrong, but I think I have to go with Mario Brothers.
I can't think of one that's earlier.
I can't either, but I know I'm wrong. Wait, no, because anything Tron related would have been based on the movie, not the other way around.
Yeah, the movie came first, so Tron
So-
doesn't count.
I've got to. I would almost bet money that I'm wrong, but that's the earliest video game based movie I can think of.
Oh, you would be correct. Super Mario Brothers is the
It is.
first
Overthinking it.
live-action
Overthinking
movie
it.
based on a video game. They pioneered it
Cult
all.
A cult classic,
It's man,
which is
it
very
is, and
different from a classic.
I had to. I bought a DVD copy of this off Amazon for like $3, and my son and I watched it.
Well worth $3.
Yeah, we had to. I had to let him experience it. You know.
Now I want to see the video game based on that Super
The
Mario
movie?
Brothers movie. Mm-hmm. That's the
Super Mario
what I
Bros.
wanna
The
see.
movie, the game.
movie, the game.
That would
right.
be that. Now that would be getting into like Street Fighter territory because you had
You know,
Street Fighter was based on a video game, and then they released
Yep.
Street Fighter the movie, the game.
I have no fondness for the game, but the movie is a good time in a certain way when you're in
Yeah,
a certain
I liked it.
mood. It is capable of being enjoyed the way some movies are. I won't defend it as a cinematic masterpiece, but
Right.
it has its moments. For me, it was Tuesday.
That's right.
So our friend, the Ambassador, often sends us lists for games like the ones we just played, but this week, he sent us something a little bit different. He has sent us a script for something he calls the Danverse, I presume to be serialized ongoing saga of the Retrologic world as he imagines it. And so he has requested that we read this on the show. So John and I will be voicing ourselves, and our guest Adam has the honor of voicing Garfield. And I will also take this one other character who appears here. So we will see how this goes. We will just throw you right into this right here and now. This is the Danverse. A war-torn mushroom kingdom where a world-ending battle has just been fought.
All right. All right, here we go. Any luck finding Dan?
No, he gave his life to save us from the evil Dark Dan. I think we have to accept that he is gone.
No, he can't be. He gave his life to save Retroland.
If he hadn't teamed up with President Donkey Kong, Prime Minister Kirby, famous tennis star Waluigi, and tech CEO Blaster Master, we would have been consumed by the DualShock.
We need to find him. I hear if we collect the 7 Odama balls, we can wish him back from the game overworld.
Yes, we will travel all over Retroland to find them all.
No, you won't, losers.
What? Garfield? You're not Retro. You can't be here.
Shut your lasagna holes. I had a great game on Game Gear, and my PS2 game is super rare.
What do you want?
My mission is the same as Dark Dan's, to drown the world into the DualShock and recreate a world where everyone forgets Nintendo.
But you're too late. Dan has already killed Dark Dan and the DualShock.
Not if I collect the 7 Odama balls before you. If you get in my way, you'll fight the 7 discontinued PlayStation ideas. Fat Princess, Sly Cooper, Killzone Guy, Parappa, Jack, the PS Move, and Mod Carts.
You sick monster. We will stop you. Whatever it takes, we will end you.
Time to stop you like a Monday filled with raisins. Enjoy the wrath of a Wish.com version of Mario Kart Mod Racing.
Vroom vroom, jerks. I'm way better than some lame multi-million Nintendo racing game. I'm sure Sony is gonna call me any day now for a sequel.
Let's attack.
Final Fantasy Tactics.
Doki Doki Slide.
PK Thunder.
Rare treasure game.
Solar Strike. Ah, you defeated me. Just like how Nintendo defeats our family brand so easily.
But our mission is not over yet. Garfield escaped. We need to catch those Odama balls.
But wait, Garfield left behind an egg. There's a name tag on it. What does it say?
Flightsy?
To be continued. Stay tuned for the next exciting episode where something will happen, I guess.
Randomness unleashed.
Welcome back, and and we are ready for this week's show topic as well as a community question. But first, our topic, the NES. Obviously, Adam grew up with the NES. Big fan.
Yeah.
It is your bread and butter, just as the Super NES is mine. And in keeping with last episode, we decided to rank some top 5 NES games. And I just have to say that for somebody who doesn't actually own an NES, myself, it was still really hard to place the top 5 because I have, in fact, played a lot of NES games through various means, and there are a lot of really good ones.
Yeah, it's hard to get that top 5 when there's so much good stuff there.
Like everything was clawing for the 5 spot. I want everything to be number 5. The number 1 is probably not going to surprise people, but yeah, we'll just get right into it. Who wants to go first with it? We'll count up. So who wants to go first with their number 5?
I don't mind starting. You can go ahead, John.
Yeah, let's let Adam. I was going to say,
Adam, why don't you start us off?
Okay. Now, so I mentioned before we started that I kind of cheated a little bit on one of them, and if you're going to cheat on one of these, it has to be number 5. So my number 5 is Super Mario Brothers 2 / Super Mario Brothers 3. I know.
Oh, sure.
I know it's sacrilegious to combine those into one entry.
They are very different games, but
Right.
Just for the sake of getting variety into the list, I always limit myself to 1 per series, and they are still part of the same series.
Well, and
because let's be real, if I weren't doing that, my whole list would be Mega Man games. I'm going to spoil the number 1 right now. My whole list would just be a ranking of Mega Man games.
I'm sure.
I mean, I know there's 6 of them, but
and they're outstanding. Yeah, you'd have to figure out which one is. Yeah,
Mega Man 1 would be on the chopping block. It's not that hard to figure out.
Least amount of innovation.
But it just, I have to talk about Super Mario Brothers 2, obviously with the NES being my first ever console that I bought with my money as a kid in the late 80s. The pack-in, as with most people who bought an NES, was Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. And, Super Mario Brothers was the game that spurred me to buy an NES in the first place. But Super Mario Brothers 2 technically is my first actual software purchase, with Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt being a pack-in. So I have a very vivid memory, even to this day, of going into Circuit City with my dad, really dating myself here. Anybody younger than probably 30 doesn't remember Circuit City. But we went into Circuit City with the specific goal of purchasing a copy of Super Mario Brothers 2. $49.99, just grabbed it right off of the peg, and went home with my first software purchase ever. If we're not counting the pack-in of Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt. Loved that game. One of my favorite NES games to this day. I played all the time. If we were picking what is your comfort food NES game, it's Super Mario Brothers 2. It's the game that I always reach for if I'm like when I replaced the 72-pin connector on my NES recently. It was the first game that I went to test it out. It's just quick to get into. It's fun. You can beat it in one sitting relatively quickly. There's variety there with the different characters that you can choose. Absolute favorite. But I couldn't leave Super Mario Brothers 3 off the list. So I had to just throw it in there as a tie for the number 5 spot, because the amount of hype, if you were there in the 80s and you watched The Wizard and The hype surrounding Super Mario Brothers 3 was just electric, and it was just the biggest game. That was like the first like huge hyped up national game release that everybody was talking about it. And there was so much speculation because there was no internet to speak of, and everything was word of mouth other than like the wizard and, you know, what your friends were telling you. And I remember getting it on my birthday. My uncle, who lived in the same city as us at the time, he gave me a box on my birthday, and it was one of those large like clothing boxes wrapped up. And I was like, oh, this is not a video game. And I opened it up, opened the box, removed the tissue paper, and it was like a pack of tighty-whitey underwear. And I was like, oh, thanks, like trying to be polite to my uncle. And I picked it up, and underneath the pack of tighty-whitey underwear was Super Mario Brothers 3.
Classic.
So that was
The old swapperoo.
the old switcheroo. That was one of my just standout childhood memories.
Did you need the new underwear after you saw that?
Probably.
And were they Mario underwear?
They were not. That would have been very fitting for the theme, but I think they were just like basic white, or like as the style was at the time, like white with like a red or blue accent.
Band.
Yeah, exactly. So played Mario Brothers 3 for probably a solid year without playing anything else after that. And you know, there's always the ongoing debate of which is better, Super Mario Brothers 3 or Super Mario World. And if you ask me now, I think objectively Super Mario World just barely ekes out Super Mario Brothers 3. But as far as like me in my life, what was the biggest like release and playing it at the time that it came out, it's Super Mario Brothers 3. That's my number 5.
I mean, you can't go wrong with Mario, really. I mean, Mario is missing maybe, but I mean like and that whole trilogy is just, you know, to have all three of those games, even the first the original Super Mario Bros, I would say maybe doesn't hold up as well as the other two, but I mean,
it's still fun to play.
It basically defined what home console video games could be.
Exactly.
You know, in terms of impact, it dwarfs everything else.
Yeah. And like I said, it's the game that I ended up playing that made me want to buy an NES. There was no other. I played Atari at my friends' houses, and it didn't like, it was fun, but I was never like, oh, I want to get an Atari. I had never gotten to that point. Playing Super Mario Brothers was what made me want my own Nintendo to play at home. So that was like the big deep dive into, okay, I want to save up and spend the money on this. This is going to be my system. And it took me a year and a half to save up the $99 or whatever it was. I'm pretty sure it was that for the action set at that time. And that's like just still to this day, one of my favorite gaming memories is finally, after like a year and a half of chores and birthday money and Christmas money, saving up every dollar and counting, like every week I would count all the money that I had in my little like tackle box of saved up money until I had that $100. And I was like, Dad, I have it. Here's the money. Please, can you get me my system on the way home? And that day he came home with it, and we hooked it up to the big Quasar TV with the wood paneling in the living room, and played Super Mario Brothers on my own screen, on my own time, in my own house, and it was beautiful.
Mm-hmm. I'll go ahead and go next since we're on the topic of Mario. My number 5 is actually Dr. Mario, and this is a slot that changed a lot of times. It wasn't even like really in the running, but the more I thought about it, I'm like, you know, I want to give props to some of the great puzzle games on the NES. And I almost put Tetris here too. But Tetris, for a lot of people, the Game Boy was like their real experience with Tetris. I actually I prefer the NES version of Tetris a lot, simply because having color helps. I don't have the best eyes. Having color contrast help you make out the shapes is a huge benefit. And even compared to older versions of Tetris, it's the newer Tetris is a lot more forgiving, and I actually like the rigidity of classic NES Tetris, where if a block lands, it lands. You're not going to just slide it all over the place and rotate it 300 times after it hits. No, you got to actually know what you're doing, and there's a whole competitive thing. But I settled on Dr. Mario because it's really a bit more. It's more innovative to the NES itself. Tetris, it had already been, other places. It's kind of everywhere. And Dr. Mario really started on the NES. The two are actually very linked in my mind because, as I said, I didn't grow up with an NES. I grew up with a Super Nintendo. And I had Tetris and Dr. Mario on that system.
Right.
That was what I played both those games on for most of the time. But really, Dr. Mario, its importance too for being really one of the things that kind of established Mario as being this everyman spin-off character.
Yep.
I mean, because we had Donkey Kong, we had the Mario Bros. Arcade game, we had Super Mario Bros. Mario Bros. USA was kind of an oddity. Yeah, and there were the cameos, but this was we're just going to take Mario and do something completely different with him and make a game around it. So that's a pretty big precedent to hit. And even compared to a lot of other falling block puzzle games, I feel like it manages to be distinct enough without feeling too derivative of things like Tetris or Puyo Puyo. It's definitely got its own flavor to it. Even just being this succession of more and more viruses, harder stages. It really kind of surprised me where I feel pretty confident putting it in that number 5 spot, even though it didn't come to mind right away.
Hard agree on that. Yeah, that was probably my second or third game for NES.
All right, my number 5 might be on your guys' list. I'm not sure, but it's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game.
Nice.
The beat 'em up.
Glad to see TMNT mentioned for sure.
Oh yeah, this is one that I played endless hours. In fact, I edged Battletoads out for this game just because I played more multiplayer of this game than I did Battletoads. And I also beat this game, which Battletoads is very much harder to beat. So that's how this one made it. It's this is the first time I could think of with the beat 'em up being able to play 3-player co-op,
Yeah, I don't remember.
It's interesting. This did not make my list. I do have a lot of fond memories of Turtles in Time. I said, grew up with the Super Nintendo. I have found a lot of pre-Final Fight beat 'em ups are hard for me to go back to. There's a certain sea change that I think happened with Final Fight where beat 'em ups have a particular feel and controls to them sense
quicker, snappier.
Can make those earlier ones seem a little awkward. So if anybody was expecting Double Dragon to be on the list for me, it's also not there.
No.
Nope.
Yeah, once a game does something so well, it just kind of raises the bar for every other game in that genre that comes out at any point after that. So I understand what you're talking about for sure.
Well, we'll keep the pace going. What do we have at number 4, Adam?
All right, I'll keep it going. So I know you mentioned Mega Man, and I didn't want to cheat a second time. So I'm going with more of just a personal, what is most meaningful and, to me specifically. But my number 4 is Mega Man 2.
Mega
And I
Man
know,
2, solid choice.
yeah. And I know Mega Man 2 is, pound for pound, probably not the best NES Mega Man game, but it was the one.
I think it's the most popular favorite for most people.
It's the most popular, probably. It's the one that I played first at a friend's house on their giant like projector TV. And that was the first time I experienced Mega Man. And so that really stuck with me. I will still argue to this day that it has the best soundtrack of any Mega Man game. And honestly, and I've mentioned this on Retro Groove before, but if someone asked me what the best game soundtrack is, at least for NES, I'm going with Mega Man 2. The soundtrack is outstanding, start to finish. Every track is amazing. It just rocks.
No arguments here.
It's why he's called Rockman.
Yep.
So that's my pick for number 4, Mega Man 2. My favorite Mega Man 2 game to go back to, maybe because I've played it far more than any of the others. Mega Man 1 is fine, but I actually have been enjoying going through Mega Man 3 because I picked that up earlier this year. But yeah, if I had to pick one Mega Man game to play the rest of my life, it's Mega Man 2.
Yeah, obviously Mega Man is going to be on my list a little further up. We'll get to that when we get there. So my number 4 is a game that probably wouldn't have been on this list if I was making it a few years ago. It's actually Super C, the sequel to Contra.
Nice.
So I'm very much a latecomer to Contra. I didn't even Wii Virtual Console. I still hadn't played Contra, but I picked up the collection on Switch. I get it. I get why people like Contra. It really, to me, it really does hold up. It really is just pure
Konami
awesome goodness, great
classic
design,
Konami goodness.
tight controls, peak Konami, really. And I don't know if it's like a hot take or whatever. I actually like Super C better than the original Contra. I think half the reason Super C is not as well regarded is because the Konami code only gives you 10 lives in Super C, and people just aren't good enough to appreciate it. I'm sorry.
I don't remember like everybody had Contra, but I don't remember Super C being a thing until like later in life. I don't know if it was as like widespread.
So one of the main reasons, and this goes back to the thing about I don't have the best eyesight. One of the best things they did for Super C is they made enemy bullets a lot more visible. Oh. They're a little bit bigger. The hitbox is still very tight on them, but they are, round and they're colorful, and they flash. So you can tell where enemy bullets are and you can dodge them a lot more easily. I don't know how many times in the NES version of Contra I get hit by something that I just didn't see, because those bullets are tiny little dots. So that's one big thing. The other thing is the level design uses a lot more slopes. And those slopes are really nice because, like a lot of run and gun games, you didn't actually have a way to stand still and angle your shots. But the way, since you're always running uphill, it actually works to where you can run and shoot forward up the hill at perfectly the same angle. And it just it makes sense the way everything's laid out there, but it does give the stages a little bit more versatility in how you have to approach different things and angle your shots than just sort of the same old, pray that the spreader gun covers everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, Contra's great. And I think Super C is just a little bit better.
No argument here.
John, what do you have for number 4?
So for number 4, I decided to kind of like what you said, that to me, the top 4 could probably be placed in any order. So I decided to throw Legend of Zelda in number 4.
There it is.
Solid choice.
Love it.
It's one of those games that as a kid, I mean, this game released the same year that I was born, so I didn't have any like direct experience with it until much later. But even like 5 or 6 year old me was like you could go anywhere in this game. Like there's no left or right, like or right to left.
Yeah, a game that wasn't like truly linear was still quite I mean, I guess you did bring up adventure earlier. I mean, that's like that's like as primitive as we were talking prior to the Legend of Zelda, though.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
definitely.
Go
for it, Adam.
I was just going to say every Zelda game after that, pretty much. I mean, Link to the Past is a 16-bit upgraded version of the NES Legend of Zelda, and it just kind of perpetuated from there, even to the point that, I don't think it's too big of a trivia fact that when they were planning Breath of the Wild, they started with a primitive version of it, based on the NES game, and just to get like mechanics and things like that down. So it's the root of every Zelda game that came after it. And it felt enormous at the time. And then maybe it is the fact that it was top down. The map seemed like it went on forever. There was north, south, east, west. There were hidden things that
it did feel endless.
Yeah, and originally it was planned to be endless, where things would randomize and you could play it forever and play a different game every time. Didn't technically turn out that way, but at the time, going back to it now, it seems really primitive, but just absolutely innovative and really mind-blowing at the time that it came out. Everybody was talking about it, sharing secrets.
That's what I was going to say. I think this was like the start of like the playground
for sure
rumor stuff. Like, hey, you can do this. Or have you tried this?
Yep.
Throw bombs everywhere.
Great pick.
All right, we're in the top three now.
Number 3.
This is where it gets real.
Where we get real. So, it was really hard for me to nail down the top 3. My number 3 title is Battletoads. I knew I needed a Rare game on here. Rare the developer, and there's fewer iconic Rare games. There's, how do I say it? Battletoads is by far the most well-known NES Rare game. And
Rare hadn't really blossomed in the NES. Like they were more of a port house.
Yeah, they probably hit their peak in the N64. Although you could argue Donkey Kong Country was peak. Where do you go after Donkey Kong Country?
But they weren't really on anyone's radar until Battletoads came out. And, we all know it's kind of a little bit of a, I don't know if copycat might be too strong of a word, but, Battletoads lends a lot to the Turtle Mania of the era. And there's nothing wrong with that. Turtles were the biggest thing ever. So I would rather play Battletoads than any of the TMNT NES games. And I am one of the biggest Ninja Turtles fans you'll ever meet. I love playing Battletoads to this day. The combat feels so good. It's so satisfying to pull out those combos where your fist turns 50 times the size that it's supposed to be and launch an enemy across the screen. Some really innovative stuff like the boss battle in the first level where you're playing the battle from the first person view of the enemy.
Yep.
You're seeing the battle from the view of the boss, that's bonkers. I don't know that that's ever been done since then. Just really cool ideas. pretty amazing graphics especially for the time. I mean, it almost looks akin to some of the early Super Nintendo games. They really pushed the NES to its very limits with that game.
Yeah. I mean, it came out in 91, so it would have been real close to the end of the NES life cycle. I'm sure they figured out and I mean, they were a very hands-on developer. Like,
yes,
they were doing all kinds of stuff with NES hardware. So yeah, they knew the ins and outs. They ported lots of things, and I mean, they were already, by the time Battletoads come out, they were already kind of establishing themselves as a second-party Nintendo developer.
Yeah, and you know, the quality of the game speaks volumes, and is no surprise why they ended up becoming such a huge developer later on. But that's my number 3, and I'm sticking to it.
Awesome. I respect Battletoads. I've never really been able to get into it myself, so not on my list.
To be there, man.
Unfortunately, my number 3 is a game that started in my rough draft at number 5, and as I thought about it, I just kept pushing it up, and that's Kirby's Adventure.
Nice.
Kirby's Adventure is really and I mentioned this again just for context, like, I did not grow up with the NES, and a lot of these games I played other ways, and I even talked about it earlier. The first way I sort of experienced this game was Nightmare to Dreamland on the Game Boy Advance, which is a remake of it. But so it's kind of difficult for me to go back to the actual NES version, and it's like, okay, some of the quality of life isn't there. The visuals aren't quite as good. But I think really when you place it next to all the other NES games, it's outstanding. Like, visually, it's outstanding. It's one of the best looking NES games.
Absolutely,
it did have the benefit of being a pretty late release, but it looks fantastic. The whole idea of copy abilities started here. I mean, you play Kirby's Dream Land, he does not have copy abilities. He just eats things and spits them out. Like, that's just such a huge thing. And to have that variety of powers on demand throughout a level in a game was just like crazy at the time. And then to have these little mini games in between levels, and like, it does so much for an 8-bit game that it really deserves more props. I think it gets overlooked a lot of the time.
Agreed.
Yeah, Kirby's Adventure.
That one made
Top
my
3.
runner-up. But my number 3 is Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse. I had to find somewhere to put a Castlevania game, and you know, as far as the trilogy goes on NES, 3's my favorite.
Yeah, I would say 3's a clear favorite for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, I love the original Castlevania, but 3 is just, I mean, it's just the natural progression that, like, they just kept building on it and making it better. So
you got the branching paths, you got multiple playable characters. I love any game with multiple playable characters. It's just, you know, it's another thing to play around with. I always love playing as Grant. I'd usually play through the whole game as Grant.
Yep. But no,
climb on everything.
I mean, that's the deal. Like, whenever it's the Ninja Turtles, you could play as 3 different turtles, but they feel very the same. So like Dracula's Curse was a very unique, like, it's almost like you're playing a new game whenever you play a new character, especially in that time period when it released. It's like, oh, this character plays totally different from any of the other characters. And you could say that for each one. They all have their quirks. Like, I don't know. The game just, when I first played it, it just blew my mind. Like how good of it was done.
Yeah. It's fantastic. And I am actually shocked at myself that it's not on my list. It was on that early draft, and I eventually kicked it off. Like, as I thought about it more from the perspective, like, this is like number 6 easy, but like, as I thought about it more from the perspective of like the games that I enjoy replaying the most now, Castlevania 3 is one that I still enjoy, but I would play these other 5 games on my list before it if I had to choose only 5. So that's kind of what brought me there. But yeah, I do think too, and I don't know if this is the case for everybody, it's still a very hard game, but I do find the difficulty of Castlevania 3 is not as frustrating as the difficulty of Castlevania 1. I don't even necessarily think it's easier per se, but I guess it's because you have those alternate characters, because I think the hardest parts of the game are not the bosses, it's the platforming. Yeah, and you can always just pick Alucard and turn into a bat. So
true.
You can always, if you're getting frustrated, there's ways to overcome the hardest parts of that game.
Yep. Well, Castlevania just has a lot of like cheap death, like just instantly put in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's Nintendo hard. It started here.
That's very true. All right, let's move on.
We do number 2s?
Yep, Doozies. Number 2s.
All right. And we don't need to go back and rehash, but my number 2 is Legend of Zelda.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, it at that time in my life, it was just so massive and such a sense of adventure and discovery and endlessness in the gameplay. The gold cartridge just made it feel extra special. You know, it was just a moment in time that was really, really amazing for console gaming. And, you know, to this day, I mean, you know, that's why my like screen name is Octorok. It stemmed from that original NES and them being like my favorite enemies in the game. It was very formative for me, and I have nothing but good things to say about that first original Legend of Zelda on the NES. I'll always have some critiques about any of the Zelda games moving forward from that, but I don't have a single negative thing to say about the original Legend of Zelda. Not one.
Shame on me for not having it on my list.
Ooh.
That's okay. That means we get to talk about other games.
So my number 2 is one that is equally expected, though, and that is Super Mario Bros. 3. I actually kicked it all the way up to the number 2 spot.
Nice.
Obviously, I love Super Mario Bros. 2 as well, but my rules are 1 per series, even if they're pretty different.
Yeah, I definitely cheated on having.
And if I have to pick one, if I have to pick a favorite between the 2, it's going to be 3 for me. The world map, just so many power ups. The frog suit, the hammer suit. Yeah, you had just really cool, so much cool stuff going on here. It's Mario. It's still pretty much the best 2D Mario.
Just the amount of additional content to that game from the original game. Like,
oh yeah, you go from Mario Bros to Mario Bros 3.
Like, I don't count 2.
I mean, Super Mario USA is a weird thing, and then Lost Levels is basically very derivative of the first game. So
it is. Yeah, I mean, it's directly just like in today's day and age, Lost Levels would have probably been a DLC like add-on to the first game,
right? Definitely,
with how close it is. And Super Mario Brothers 3 just feels like honestly, it feels like it could have been a Super Nintendo game when you're playing it.
Well, and think about how much Mario stuff came from Mario 3 and never left. I mean, you've got the Koopalings, you've got the airships, you've got the different like worlds where the first world is a grassy, easygoing hill land, and the second is desert, and you know what I mean, and it goes on from there.
Yeah, no, there was like a concerted like let's bring back Mario 3 stuff for sure. like 3D Land came out, and it was like the big news, like the raccoon tail's back, the Tanuki suit's back.
Yeah, I think Super Show helped with that stuff too, like going forward. It had a lot of Super Mario Brothers 2, but they definitely the later stuff got into Super Mario Brothers 3.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good pick.
But yeah, peak Mario. Mario is peak everything. So.
Yep. And we don't have to go any further, but mine is also Super Mario Brothers 3.
There it is.
There you go.
So the tandem, like, it's just, it was really hard not to put that game at number one. But if I'm really honest, I don't go back and play it as much as my number one. So that's why it isn't number one.
Fair enough.
Do we want to do our runners up now?
Yeah, we'll keep the suspense on number one, although I think several number ones might be obvious at this point, but
right.
We'll keep the suspense of number one waiting and just throw out some honorable mentions. Obviously, some of the other ones that made your guys' lists that aren't on mine, very honorable mentions, but they've already been mentioned. Yeah, the Castlevania series. I have to give props to Eliminator Boat Duel.
I had that on mine too.
I kind of wanted to put it on my list. I could not, in honesty, do it.
Oh, man.
It's not that good. It's good. It's not top five good. It's not top five good. We don't do video, but I actually put Eliminator Boat Duel box art up for my background as we record this. Partly because the pink waves and stuff have a very Retrologic aesthetic to them.
They do, but,
yeah, it's just that along with Vice Project Doom are like the unsung heroes of the NSO NES app. I've advocated for them tirelessly. People complain when stuff like this gets added, and it's it's a shame, because if they actually played them, they'd see they're actually quite good.
It's really fun.
I talked about Tetris already. Crystallis. Just a quick shout out there. Journey to Silius, of course. Getting into the Sunsoft stuff. Obviously, I had Sunsoft on my mind still. Love Journey to Silius. Underrated game. Hugely underrated soundtrack. One of the NES's best. But at the end of the day, it is a poor man's Mega Man. A poor man's Mega Man is still a fantastic game.
Right. It's
but
like
it is kind of a poor man's Mega Man.
Even if it's bad, it's still better than most other stuff.
Yeah. Ninja Gaiden kind of goes without saying.
Yes.
It's in a lot of people's lists, I'm sure. Blaster Master, another Sunsoft, probably Sunsoft's magnum opus. Kind of hard not to put that one on there, but like, really, I don't have a lot of experience with the authentic NES Blaster Master. I play Blaster Master 0, and that has spoiled me. Because you go back to the original, there's like sprite flicker everywhere, and like it hit up on the limits of the system. It was too ambitious, frankly. So play Blaster Master 0 on the Switch instead. I mean, it's great.
Unless this is somebody's number one, we need to mention Metroid.
Mm-hmm. Metroid deserves the mention, even if the original NES game is really hard to go back to. Yeah, it's really hard to go back to. Doesn't have a map.
You know that thing that you need in Metroidvanias? Wasn't in the first Metroid.
Pre-Metroidvania.
Right.
We also need to throw out Star Tropics.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It was hard for me. Like, Star Tropics would probably be like number 6 or 7 for me. It's an awesome game that I have a lot of fond memories of. I didn't plan any runners up or honorable mentions or anything, but one of mine would have been Ninja Gaiden. So thank you for bringing that up. Super fun game that I love playing to this day. The only other thing that, and I'll just kind of group a lot of these together as one, but a lot of these Disney Capcom games are just so top notch. Like, me and my daughter will play Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers and just have a riot. They're so fun. I love Darkwing Duck. It's a super fun game. Tailspin.
And of course, DuckTales, I think.
DuckTales for sure. Yep. I've actually never played Tailspin.
People yelling at us across time and space because that's not on anyone's list.
DuckTales is really, really good. The only other game that comes to mind that I played a lot of is the Tiny Toon Adventures game. I put that kind of on the same level as DuckTales. I played a lot of that. It was really fun.
The only other one I have that I could think of is, for me, we need some racing game representation, and that's RC Pro AM.
Yes,
Also,
I've got that
also
one.
a rare game.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one I don't have a lot of experience with, but I know it comes up a lot.
Oh, it's
especially amongst people who were there for the NES days. It was a go-to.
It's so fun, man. It's so fast paced.
And you know what? Now that I think of it, between John mentioning RC Pro-Am and Sam mentioning Eliminator Boat Duel, I have to at least give a shout out to Cobra Triangle. It's a rare game. It's a boat racing shooting game. Really fun. Kind of pretty impressive graphics for the NES, as is, par for the course for a rare title. But that was a game that early on, that was one of my kind of random, we had a local video store that eventually started to sell off their NES rental games fairly cheaply. And I remember getting Cobra Triangle and Marble Madness for maybe $10 each. And I thought it was I just couldn't believe, that those were my first used game purchases. So, me being used to walking into Circuit City or Kmart or something and spending 40 or $50 on a game, being able to go to my local video store and pick something out of a bin for $10. I didn't care that it didn't have a box or an instruction manual. I was like, really? So I remember getting Cobra Triangle, Marble Madness, and then it was a Bugs Bunny game. I can't remember the name of it. One of the Bugs Bunny games, if there's multiples, but it was definitely a Bugs Bunny game. And that was those were my first you can buy used games for way less than the new game.
Nice.
For sure. I'm down.
Marble Madness is solid, man.
It's hard. It's a hard game. But I'll still play it to this day.
Yeah, it's a lot harder than with the trackball and arcade.
I never got the opportunity to play it in the arcade. Seems like that'd be a very different experience.
The only other one I had for an honorable mention is the original Fire Emblem. Obviously, I haven't played the actual original. I played the Switch release of it that was finally localized. Hugely, significant for the strategy RPG genre.
Right.
I just kind of disqualified it because I didn't really play it, as it originally was. I played an updated version. So, but thought for the sake of influence, especially, it's worth a mention.
For sure.
And lastly, we have our number ones.
Okay, so this took a lot of back and forth for me, but my number one NES game has to be Dragon Warrior / Dragon Quest, the very first one. Me personally, my comfort food genre is RPGs, JRPGs. And, being a kid in Southwest America in the 80s and early 90s, this was my first introduction to said genre. And there was that whole promotion through Nintendo Power, believe it was 1990. And basically you would get a copy of Dragon Warrior, I think even with the strategy guide and a poster or something, for signing up for a Nintendo Power subscription. So, I begged my dad, I got it. And it's funny, even pretty recently, whenever it was that they changed their online database to the new My Nintendo thing, I could actually log into my Nintendo account online and still see my order for that back all the way back
was
to
it back
1990.
when it was Club Nintendo? You could still see that?
Yes, Club Nintendo. That's what it used to be. So I could see my orders from like 89 and 90 for like the NES cleaning kit and the Nintendo Power subscription with Dragon Warrior. I got this game and it just instantly blew my mind and just dragged me in. I was obsessed with this game, and the fact that I could basically stop and save for the most point at any point in time, I just loved it. Fell in love with it. We were joking earlier in the episode about losing progress in a game, and so at that point I would have been about 8 years old, which means Dan would have been about 4 years old, and I probably had a solid like 20 or 30 hours invested in this one file. I was probably level 14 or 15, and basically around level 20 you can beat the game. And 4-year-old Dan went in and deleted my save file. And I was raging. And from that point on, I literally would sleep with the cartridge underneath my pillow so that Dan could not get access to it. And I would leave it there unless I was playing it. When I was done playing it, I would take it out and put it back under my pillow. But it's just one of my all-time absolute favorite games. Still go back and play it. It's, pretty archaic by today's standards, but the fact, like, I fired up Dragon Quest 11, the demo for the first time pretty recently, and that opening fanfare that they play, oh my god, I almost was brought to tears because it brought me right back, because it's the same song and they've perpetuated that throughout the series. And I heard that song countless times, and just like little menu songs and like the file select music and all the little fanfares and stuff like that throughout the game have perpetuated from that original Dragon Quest game. And it just means so much to me from not just a nostalgia standpoint, but finding those comfort games that you go back to time and time again and really just allow you to get lost in the world and the lore, and transport you to another place entirely. I think that was the first game that ever did anything like that for me. So that's my number one, with a bullet or a slime.
Well, if it was not obvious by now, my number one is a Mega Man game.
Which
right?
one?
The question is, which Mega Man game? Is it Mega Man 2? No, it's Mega Man 3.
There it is.
They're pretty neck and neck, to be honest. I've generally preferred Mega Man 3 over 2 for a couple of reasons. Part of it is the weapons feel a bit more balanced to me. Let's face it, Metal Blade in Mega Man 2 is just overpowered. There's no reason to use other weapons.
It's true.
Mega Man 3 feels more like almost every weapon has a purpose,
right?
But they don't overlap too much. But you could use whichever one you want if you want to, kind of, except for Topspin. It's garbage, but that's the whole thing. That's like the whole point, is then it one shots the final boss. Right. So even Topspin has its use at the very end when you thought it was useless. So I always like that about it. It feels like Mega Man really hit its peak, maybe halfway in between 2 and 3, to be honest. But you kind of see everything that would define classic Mega Man finally fall into place here. Yeah. This is the game that introduced the slide. This is the game that introduced Rush. This is the game that introduced Proto Man. Pretty much the only thing missing is the charge shot. And as far as classic Mega Man goes, the charge shot was not needed. because again, it kind of takes the emphasis away from the weapons you get from beating Robot Masters. Mega Man X handled it well, but in classic Mega Man, it kind of just made getting new weapons feel not so important. But obviously Mega Man 4 still good, charge shot or no. Mega Man 5 and 6 are still good. Even Mega Man 1 is really not by any stretch a bad game. It just, you're comparing it to the other 5, and you've got 5 whole amazing games to play on the NES on one system, and like they're all extremely good. It's just ridiculous, frankly. It's an embarrassment of riches. And obviously I came to these games late, but I mean, even though they were still very old then, I would spend a lot of time in college, my like post final exams ritual, because I would usually have a couple days before my dad would come to pick me up and take me home for break. Your friends are either already left for break or they still have exams and they need to study for you. So you don't really you can't do much. So I just stay in my dorm and I would play through all the classic Mega Man games in a row.
There you go.
And
Can't beat that.
I love them all. If I have to pick one, it's Mega Man 3.
Nice.
Well,
John.
Since Adam got to go first, he kind of stole my thunder because I have the same game.
Yes,
There you
I
go.
would have guessed.
Trade minds think alike.
Tell us more about Dragon Warrior, though, please. I could talk about it all night. We could do a whole episode on it.
I have done a whole episode on it.
Yes.
That was the game that I chose to launch my other podcast with. I play this game annually. I discovered it quite a bit later. It was probably in the mid 90s. I had a buddy that had a copy and I played at his house. And then immediately whenever I was going to get picked up, I asked him if I could borrow it. And I kept it for a couple of weeks and played to finish finally. After playing this was in the summertime. So, I mean, I played all day for those 2 weeks.
Yep.
I don't know how many hours I had in the game. And then I had to get my own copy, and I still have it to this day.
Nice.
It's just my favorite RPG, probably. Between it and the original Phantasy Star is pretty close. They both just have that same feeling of new, original concept type RPG stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's because I'm coming later. Maybe it's my Super Nintendo bias. I feel like RPGs did not hit their stride until the Super Nintendo. I respect.
Oh, definitely.
I respect the precedent set by, and I think that's what I kind of talked a little bit earlier. My list is very platformer heavy, right? And I think the reason is NES just had so many good platformers, and I think the reason it did is because very early on you had Super Mario Bros. Show the way,
right?
And you didn't have that template to imitate for RPGs until Dragon Warrior, and that was later in the NES's life, and so we wouldn't really see that, us. Well, that's true. Yeah.
Japan has a plethora of RPG games that are, Dragon Warrior-esque. We just didn't get them here. The RPG genre didn't take off in the West until later.
Right. And it
took those NES RPGs
to do that.
Do feel a lot harder to go back to me.
I mean, no argument
obviously, here. The one I think of, I think it's actually the only NES RPG I've played all the way through. Certainly the only one I've played through more than once is the original Mother, Earthbound Beginnings. Obviously, I'm not playing the original because that was unreleased in English. But it's, I play it because I love Earthbound. I can enjoy it. I can go through it. But it is not, favorite NES game. It did not make the list. It was not really even seriously in the running, despite how much I love Earthbound that came after it.
Yeah. Man.
That was
so many good games.
Solid lists. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good variety, too. A lot of, It really is. Like I said, I came to the system. I didn't even grow up owning it, but like I have a hard time picking a top 5 because there's a lot of good stuff to be had.
Yeah,
A lot of respect for the NES.
I mean, for me, and this could be complete and utter nostalgia, but like even the quote unquote bad games are still like ridiculous fun to play.
And this is the console that basically saved video games. So props for that. Credit where credit is due. After Atari crashed.
Failure.
And that was one of the reasons.
Surprisingly fast.
And that was one of the reasons why the NES, just physically, the design of the console itself looks so different. And, it was designed to model what VCRs looked like at the time. It was front loading. It went in and then the media went in and then down. It was very, very different from the Famicom because the Famicom looked like a toy. And if they were going to bust into the North American market, it couldn't look anything like the Atari stuff that came before it. It couldn't be a toy. It had to be an entertainment system that hooked up to your...
It's funny because we just had an episode about the Wii and how they were careful to make it a remote, right? Not a controller. It was a remote. And kind of that same line of thinking of like, let's make a thing that looks like a VCR that people can put in front of their TV. And
that was exactly what it was. And the comparison to the Wii is spot on, and Nintendo will do that with their blue ocean strategy. And I'm here for it, and we'll always be here for it, Nintendo. That's all I got to say about the NES. Good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we could go forever. But we do have a community question to get to. Hopefully, this isn't one that'll be too tough to answer after all that. Certainly not as tough as picking the top 5 NES games of all time.
No.
So we've got one relatively straightforward community couch question from Warriors of Wazd. Our good friend over there runs a podcast called the same name, Warriors of Wazd. That's WASD, like keyboard, because it is a podcast about PC gaming. So if you're interested in that, check them out. And he asks, what is your favorite video game setting? And he gives 9 options. Evidently, we're not allowed to come up with any other. It has to be 9 choices. The Beaches of Normandy, 1. 2, Space Colony or Planet. 3, Fantasy Forests. 4, Haunted Mansion. 5, Farm. 6, Gangsta City. 7, Zombie City. 8, Nuclear Fallout Russia. Or 9, Cyber City.
What? Well, I guess just based on my top 2 being Legend of Zelda and Dragon Warrior, I guess I have to go with Fantasy Forest. If I'm being honest.
That's stable.
It's going to be between that 2 and 3.
I feel like an outdoor locale is always like a pretty safe bet. You're going to get good variety, right? You can do forests, and you can change up the terrain, and it'll feel very open. Yeah, I mean, like, I like space, I like planets, I like sci-fi kind of settings. But as I think about it more generally, a lot of them can be really bland. Like, if you just have a generic space setting and it's just like a bunch of like industrial buildings. You think about all the games set in space stations, and it's like everything looks the same. This is not.
It's hard to make that feel fresh.
You think about, like, I actually am gravitating towards Haunted Mansion. I can't think of... I mean, it's a little too specific, but I can't think of an example that's ever been, like, actually disappointing. Like, it's always cool. It's always just a fun theme. Right. And I don't even like horror.
The Mario boost stages.
Boost. Well, I was thinking like Castlevania. You know, that's every Castlevania game is a haunted castle, which a castle is a kind of mansion.
Yeah.
And like, you know, even just that kind of, I don't even like horror games, but like to have that kind of aesthetic on a more lighthearted take is always, I think, a lot of fun. I like spoopy, you know, spoopy games. Even Castlevania's got shades of that. It's never all that scary. Like there's some legitimately creepy vibes, but there's also skeletons that throw chicken at you. So
it's not taken terribly seriously.
And I like that about it. I guess Cyber City is sort of every Mega Man game, but
yeah, the same. We kind of tired of Zombie City and Nuclear Fallout Russia. Like everything is post-apocalyptic or zombies.
Little too much of that. A little too much of that. So yeah, if I have to pick one of these, it's going to be the Haunted Mansion. If I got to come up with my own, it would be those levels that are made out of food.
Yeah.
Yes. Super Mario Odyssey.
Those are always fun. Yeah, like Odyssey or like most Kirby games, frankly.
Yep.
I was going to say beach theme before we got the multiple
Beach
choice.
theme. Mm-hmm.
Beach or water.
Yeah, that was not an option. Beaches of Normandy was an option.
Yeah, that's
Normandy a beach.
I heard beaches and I got excited.
No.
But then that got real specific real fast to like a very small handful of games.
Not a relaxing beach. Not the kind.
Not a nice beach visit there.
Take your blanket elsewhere.
But good question.
Yeah. Always brings us some interesting questions. Good for a talk. And that is going to be it for episode 84. Thank you for listening to the RetroLogic podcast. We are proudly part of the Nintendo Dads family of podcasts. If you like what you hear, check us out on Twitter and Instagram at RetroLogic Games. Of course, we also have the website, retrologic.games. You are also welcome to jump into our non-toxic Discord community. Everyone there is friendly. Again, 100% non-toxic, machine washable, all that's good stuff. The link is in the Twitter bio at RetroLogic Games once again. Thank you, Adam, for joining us on this episode. And we hope to have Dan back soon for his triumphant return.
Come back, Dan. We need you to voice Garfield next time and not me.
Yes.
And possibly Dark Dan.
Oh, I guess he has to. I guess I can make a guest appearance as Evil Garfield if need be. But Dan has to be Dark Dan.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, gentlemen. Oh my god.
So with that said, does anybody need a break? As the showrunner for the week, I am obligated to ask if anybody needs to use the potty.
Yes, potty break, especially after that, whatever that was.
Especially after that, need to clear some things.
Yeah.